Hey everyone, it's Pat from Seattle Coffee Gear here. As you may have noticed, we've got a new studio space to kick off 2021. We're excited to be filming in our new space. We are really excited to bring you a whole wealth of videos over the course of this year and into the future. We're excited to do it in this swanky new studio. So today we're taking a look at 4 of the best sort of entry-level grinders that you can get for slow brewing. So what that means is things like drip, pour over, press, and in some cases you can also get into some espresso with like a pressurized basket. So these grinders are going to get you going on that stuff. They're not going to work with higher end espresso machines, but they're a great way to get going if you're into drip or pour over or one of those other slow brew methods. So we're going to take a look at consistency, things like static, noise level, usability, just some general features, and we're going to roll through them over the course of the video so you can sort of see in real time some of the benefits of the different grinders. Obviously, we'd like to be able to tell you just buy this one, but as you'll see, it gets a little bit more complicated than that once we get into the kind of strengths and weaknesses of each grinder. So the grinders that we're going to be looking at today are the Bistro, the Capresso Infinity, the Solus Scala, and the Baratza Encore. You've probably seen some of, if not all of these videos or grinders before, so you might be familiar with them on some level, but it'll be interesting to see them all, how they stack up one-to-one against each other. So what we're going to do first is take a look at the consistency levels of the different grinders. As you can see here, I've got some plates with some grounds at 3 different consistency levels or grind setting levels. And we use the same coffee for all of these, but you may find if you have one of these at home that you'll see little differences here and there with all aspects of this because so much of it depends on the coffee that you're using. So again, today we're using the same coffee in these hoppers, but little differences will happen in grind time, consistency, static, all that stuff based on your conditions at home. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's start looking at the Bistro's grinds over here. So as you can see, this grinder has a pretty wide range for its grinds. We've got everything down to a fine that you could use in a pressurized portafilter and do okay with, to a more medium, all the way up to a very coarse, almost kind of pebbly grind. What you'll notice here is that there is a little bit to be desired in terms of consistency. None of these grinds are terrible, but they are not as consistent as some of the other grinders that we're going to look at. But the range here is really impressive, how fine and how coarse it can go for a grinder in this price range. So next we'll take a look at the Capresso Infinity's grounds. This one you can see we get a little bit more consistency with this grinder at the expense of some range. So we've got this sort of ultra-fine, ultra-fine by this grinder standards, for a pressurized espresso shot. We've got a more medium grind for something like a drip or a pour over, and then we go all the way up to the coarser grind that you would use in something like a press. And as you can see, it's not going quite as coarse as the Bistro, but we're getting a little bit more consistency all the way around. So then we've got the Solus Scala over here. I really like the grinds from this machine from a consistency perspective the most out of the bunch. You're getting a, frankly, impressively fine grind on the fine end of this spectrum. Still going to be used for pressurized espresso shots, not unpressurized shots, but it's really pretty impressive as to how fine it can go. Then we've got this sort of really good medium for those drip methods, and then all the way up to a coarser grind. It's pretty comparable in terms of range to the Capresso, but I really like how consistent the grinds are in this one. It can be kind of hard to spot if you put them side by side, though I think you can really see that this grinder is going to give you a little bit more consistent grounds. So then we've got the Baratza Encore. Obviously this is kind of a legendary grinder, and it does produce some pretty great results. So you kind of get the best combination of range and consistency with this one, from pretty fine fines to a pretty good medium, all the way to a very coarse and they're all pretty consistent. I like the fine and medium grind on the Scala a little more personally, but what the Encore can do over its whole range is really, really impressive. So that's a look at some of the consistency challenges levels. I think that the Scala for me wins this category, but I could see a really strong argument for the Encore, and the Capresso and the Bodum are certainly acceptable. I don't think that there's anything wrong with these grounds, but I definitely prefer these two for the consistency levels. So now that we've taken a look at the consistency of the grounds from these grinders, I've set all of them back to a medium setting, and we're going to go over some of the usability, the sound, static, hopper stuff, the kind of things that you're probably thinking about kind of around the edges of use for these grinders. So let's start again with the Bodum Bistro over here. There's some interface stuff on this grinder that I like quite a bit. There's actually a kind of a sheet on the top of the grinder in the plastic on the hopper lid that tells you some rough suggestions for different grind levels, for different brew methods, and timing for them, which is pretty cool. It's something that you'll probably grow out of pretty quick as you come up with your own ideas and information and recipes, but it's a neat starting point if you're new to brewing your own coffee. Like all of these grinders, you're going to change the grind level by rotating the hopper. It works fine on this grinder. In terms of operation, it's got a simple on-off switch and then a timer setting up here. So you rotate the timer and get different seconds of grind time. And then you push this button to activate the grind. It also has a nice, on its stepped adjust, it has kind of a nice readout of what different grind levels might be used for. So you can see more of a pour over drip to a espresso portafilter back to a press. So some nice little usability features there, but nothing super, super important, and you're gonna come to understand that stuff on your own pretty quickly. So with that in mind, let's grind a little bit so you can hear this grinder. This is a 5-second grind on its medium setting. So as you can hear, kind of a high-pitched sound to this one. It's a little loud, but it's not super bassy, so it may not reverberate through your house. You might actually find that this is a pretty good grinder to avoid waking people up in the morning. So we remove the catch bin here. I really like this rubber gasket that it has. It keeps the grinds from kind of spilling out everywhere and causing a mess. The downside is because of the material, it does tend to get grounds stuck to it. You can rinse it pretty easily, but pulling it right out of the grinder, it looks a little bit messy. So let's dump these grinds out. And so to kind of get an idea of the static, so you can see this is a pretty staticky grinder. Even tapping this out, there's still quite a bit in there. You just have to give it a rinse or wipe it out, and it's not so bad, but it definitely does have some static going on. I'm going to tap this 3 times to go over a little bit of the retention. All of these grinders are going to have some retention to them. This one, not so bad. Maybe like 1/3 of a gram there. That's pretty solid for one of these grinders. So next we have the Capresso Infinity. This one has a bit of a weird interface. As you can see, it's got this extra fine, medium, coarse up here. Those are generally okay guidelines. Again, much like with the Bodum, you're going to develop your own numbers on what you want to use for different brew methods. So eventually I'll outgrow this pretty quickly. The case is a nice material, and it's really simple to use. Basically all you're going to do is turn this timer. It doesn't really equate to seconds of grind, so it's a little confusing at first. It's more like you're setting it to grind for 3 of the units that the Capresso Infinity grinds for. But still, we're gonna try this one at a medium setting as well for about 5 seconds. So as you can hear, this one is kind of a lower tone than the Bodum, but it's also quieter, which is nice. Let's see what we got for about 5 seconds of grind. It's grinding a little slower than the Bodum, which is okay. It's a little confusing because due to the ranges of these grinders, I've set them all to their medium setting. That's going to differ a little bit from grinder to grinder. So looks like we've got a pretty similar consistency between these two right now, and this one was a little bit slower than the Bodum. One thing about the catch bin that I find a little bit frustrating, but you'll learn to work around it, these sort of notches in the side are great for sliding and removing it, but if you try to pour your grounds this way or pour them this way, sometimes you get grounds stuck in those little notches. So you definitely want to hold it from the thinner side and pour it out the wider mouth. So let's give it a few taps, check the retention here. And again, this one's almost nothing came out from that. If we hit it a little bit harder, it would drop some grounds. It's not like it's zero retention, but I don't want to whack it too much. And you can also see this one does pretty well on static, much better in my opinion than the Bistro. So if you are concerned about those kind of extra grounds sticking to the catch bin, this one definitely performs better than the Bodum in that arena. So pretty good performance, pretty good sound levels. The timer function here is a little strange and definitely takes some getting used to. You can always just hold it in place if you want to get a kind of continuous grind. So let's take a look at the Sola Scala. The Scala is kind of interesting because it has this timer over here, and then it has a start-stop button. So you can just set the timer for really high if you want, and then hit start and stop it manually, or you can dial in your preferred time on the side here. Also has the rotating hopper for setting the stepped adjust. Has a smaller catch bin than the other ones, but it does have this nice plastic lid that keeps the grounds going in there. So we're gonna run this one for about 5 seconds as well and see what we get. So this one, sort of similar noise level to the Infinity, quieter than the Bodum also. I think the sound on this one's pretty good. And for that, it's not super scientific amount of time, but it's grinding at about the rate of the Infinity, a little bit faster maybe, especially considering that the medium here is a little finer than the medium on the Infinity. In terms of static retention, you get some for sure. Retention within the catch bin is what I mean, of course. We're getting a little bit of static there. It's not too bad. It definitely doesn't feel quite as static free as the Infinity does. Oops. Let's take a look at the retention real quick. And you get a little bit of retention in this one. It's not terrible. It's probably about 0.5 gram to maybe 3/4 gram. Really not too bad. And overall, I think that this is a really good combination of sort of speed, consistency, time, all that stuff. So take a look at the Encore next. Do you want to stop for a second?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry, I was just gesturing to myself, thinking.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't need me to pause. So the Baratza Encore obviously is a really great long-standing grinder. This one is pretty simple in terms of its operation. You've got an on-off switch off to the side here, so you can flip that on, walk away, come back, and turn it off. Or you have a pulse button here that you can hold down to get a little extra grounds, or if you just want to stand there and hold it for your whole grind, you can do that as well. This one is great for single dosing, which means weighing the amount of coffee you want to use for, say, a pour over out ahead of time and just pouring those grounds in, because you can just flick it on and walk away, and you know you're not going to grind more than you need because you only put what you need in the hopper. So it's worth noting, it's good for that. Certainly you can use the timer functions on the other ones to have a similar effect, but I like how simple it is to just flick it on and off when you're doing single dosing like that. So I'm gonna run this one for about 5 seconds now. And the Encore's medium grind is a tiny bit coarser than what we get on these two, but it's a similar grind amount. Obviously these are all going to grind at pretty similar speeds with the Bodum, maybe going a little bit faster. Sound level wise, I think this one sounds a little bit better than the Scala and a little bit better than the Infinity. It's lower, which makes it a little bassier. I happen to prefer that over a higher pitched motor sound, and I think it's quiet enough that you could use it in the morning without necessarily waking up the entire house unless it is extremely quiet. The static levels here, there's definitely some static. It's better than the Scala. Again, not quite as good as the Infinity in my experience and in this test, but it's not too bad. From a retention perspective, not too bad either. Get a similar result to the Scala and the Infinity there as well. One intangible thing that we can't really hit on in a demonstration here is that the Baratza has really easily available parts. So you can, if you're the type who likes to repair your hardware over time, you can get parts for the Encore from Baratza directly for well outside of its warranty. You can purchase them and do repairs and tinker with it yourself once you're out of that warranty period, which is a really nice feature for some people. It's also the most expensive one of the grinders here, so you can kind of make a decision based a little bit on price as well. So to kind of wrap up here, in terms of the consistency, you can take a look back at the way we had the plates set up before. I really like the Scala on its consistency, combination of consistency and range. When it comes to usability, a lot of it is down to your preference. I like the Encore a lot and the Scala a lot. The Infinity, not crazy about the dial here, but it is a pretty well-performing grinder, has solid build, low static amounts. But really, you can't go wrong with any of these grinders if you are just getting into making coffee at home or just upgrading from like Spice or Blade grinder into a burr grinder, because they're all really great grinders for the cost. Thanks so much for watching today. Thanks for joining us in our brand new studio space. Hope everybody's had a happy new year. We're really excited to bring you a load of content in 2021. Make sure you like the video. If you have any questions about these grinders, drop them in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel to get all of our videos.